This man is incontinent. This man is incontinent. What you're telling me is that you're prepared to move trash, but you're not prepared to move disabled veterans. That is what you guys are telling me. That is what your highly funded department is telling me.
A sprawling 388-acre parcel of land located in West Los Angeles, beginning at the corner of Wilshire and San Vicente Boulevards, represents one of the most valuable and contested pieces of real estate in the United States. It is also the site of a major crime scene, a case of staggering fraud of the highest magnitude. Originally deeded in 1888 by private philanthropists as a permanent sanctuary for disabled soldiers, the land has been systematically stripped of its noble purpose over the last half-century through a combination of bureaucratic negligence, legislative maneuvering, and outright criminal corruption, and transformed from a home for veterans into a playground for the neighboring elite and a revenue engine for commercial interests. For example, UCLA runs a massive multi-million-dollar baseball complex here. The students of the ultra-exclusive Brentwood School play tennis and swim in Olympic-sized swimming pools here. Even an oil company drills for profit here. Meanwhile, on the sidewalks just outside the gates, veterans of the United States Armed Forces sleep in squalid tents, dying of exposure and neglect on the doorstep of the land that they are legally entitled to. And today, we're going to follow the money, we're going to name the villains, and we're going to show you how, after 50 years of corruption, the veterans finally have a chance to take back the land that's rightfully theirs. In 1888, as the United States grappled with the long-term care of Civil War veterans, Senator John P. Jones and philanthropists Arcadia Bandini de Stearns Baker and Colonel Robert Symington Baker donated approximately 300 acres of land to the National Home for Disabled Veteran Soldiers. The deed contained a specific and binding restrictive covenant, which is that the land was to be used to provide a permanent home for the nation's veterans. And for nearly 80 years, the federal government honored this promise. The Pacific branch of the National Home functioned as a self-sustaining city, housing over 4,000 veterans who lived, worked, and farmed on the property. The campus featured a trolley station, a majestic chapel, theaters, and barracks, embodying the old soldiers' home concept that Abraham Lincoln had championed. But then, disaster struck. In 1971, the Sylmar earthquake, a magnitude 6.6 quake, struck Los Angeles, causing 65 deaths, over 2,000 injuries, and $500 million plus in damages. As a result, the historic barracks were declared seismically unsafe, and rather than renovating them, they were left to ruin. With the soldiers now removed, the VA began ignoring the original deed and decided to parse it out to the highest bidders, or more accurately, to the most politically connected neighbors. Between 1990 and 2010, the West Los Angeles VA campus was transformed into a patchwork of commercial leases that bore little to no relationship to veteran care. Through what they call enhanced use leases, the VA became a landlord to the West Side's elite. The University of California, Los Angeles secured a lease for a baseball stadium on 10 acres of prime land that is now home to the UCLA Bruins baseball team. Brentwood School, an elite private K-12 academy, negotiated a lease for 22 acres of land to build a lavish athletic complex, complete with tennis courts, sports fields, and an Olympic-sized swimming pool. Other uses include a laundry facility for Marriott hotels, storage for 20th Century Fox sets, and even an oil drilling operation. Meanwhile, the number of homeless veterans in Los Angeles County swelled to over 4,000. But how and why was this ever allowed to happen?
Based on the deed, anything that doesn't permanently house and is a home for a homeless veteran and serving a homeless veteran would be not just unethical, immoral, it would be illegal to violate the federal deed. Additionally, you have a veteran, Ted Lieu, the Congress member, who tries to make something like the West LA Leasing Act, which essentially is an attempt to legitimize illegitimate leases.
This is Senate de Vermont, known to his followers as Mr. Checkpoint, a community advocate and watchdog who has been on the ground connecting dots between nefarious actors within the VA, nonprofits, real estate developers, and sleazy politicians working in concert to put profits over people.
Mr. Ted Lieu, I just had one quick question.
The 2016 Leasing Act that you authored, it specifically says that if the Office of Inspector General finds any lease to be violated, the Secretary of the VA can no longer go through a lease. Is that correct? You authored the 2016 Leasing Act.
I did, and the IG makes recommendations to the VA, and then the VA
over 50% of the leases violate the law, the Office of Inspector General said. And wait, just listen, sir, your law said though that the Secretary of the VA.
So I expect the VA to follow the IG's findings.
But so what gives the authority to work with Thomas Saffron? Shame on you, man.
In 2013, U.S. District Judge James Otero ruled in Valentini versus Shinseki that the commercial leases were indeed unauthorized under the VA's governing statutes. And this ruling should have been the end of commercial occupation of the VA's land, if not for the efforts of Congressman Ted Lieu, who represents the district that encompasses West LA, Brentwood, and UCLA, and the surrounding affluent neighborhoods. Congressman Lieu introduced H.R. 5936, West Los Angeles Leasing Act of 2016. Now, this was sold at the time as the solution to the veteran housing crisis, but in reality, it was nothing more than a legislative Trojan horse designed to protect the powerful tenants who were illegally occupying the land. Lieu included a specific carve-out in the law that explicitly authorized the VA to sign a new lease with the Regents of the University of California, effectively legalizing the UCLA lease for the Jackie Robinson Baseball Stadium, the very facility the courts had previously deemed a violation of the 1988 deed. Section 2B of the lease authorized leases to a third party to provide services that principally benefit veterans and their families for a number of non-housing related purposes, including peer activities, socialization, physical recreation, and transportation. And it was this specific language that allowed the likes of Brentwood School to claim that their swimming pool was a, quote, veteran benefit simply because they sometimes allowed veterans to use it during off hours, and a private parking lot raking in tens of millions of dollars a year owned by a company called Westside Services because it gave discounted parking to veterans. Finally, Lieu's law also included something called a master plan, which called for building 1,200 units of permanent supportive housing on the property. But instead of the VA building it and providing the service to veterans free of charge, they contracted a nonprofit called the West LA Veterans Collective, led by developer Thomas Saffron, to build and manage the project. Except to this date, very few of those units have actually ever been built, and for those that have been built, they're charging veterans a monthly rent while also receiving federal subsidies. So wait a minute, the law that was supposed to end the fraud ends up just legalizing said fraud and becoming a massive giveaway to private interests. How was this ever allowed to happen? Well, between 2014 and 2016, as Lieu's legislation was being drafted and debated, the Brentwood School spent nearly $1 million on federal lobbying. Also, according to a 2016 lobbying report, the University of California also lobbied directly for the passage of H.R. 5936. So it's almost like the bill was written directly for them. Or some might call this a fortuitous coincidence. And while the politicians and lobbyists were shaking hands in Washington, a brazen criminal conspiracy was rotting the VA from the inside out. Meet Ralph Tillman, who for years served as the VA's chief of asset management. Essentially, he was the gatekeeper of this multi-billion-dollar plot of land, which, as it turned out, he strip mined to the highest bidder. In 2018, Tillman pled guilty to accepting over $250,000 in bribes from a man named Richard Scott, the owner of Westside Services, the very parking lot operator Congressman Ted Lieu's legislation helped protect. Let's continue to follow the money. At this point, we already know Congressman Ted Lieu, but standing right beside him was Karen Bass. Before she was the mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass was a congresswoman representing the districts adjacent to the VA. She was a key co-sponsor and vocal champion of the West Los Angeles Leasing Act of 2016, and she, along with Lieu, assured the public that their quote-unquote master plan would solve veteran homelessness. So guess who was one of Karen Bass's major campaign donors? That's right, Thomas Saffron, the developer who coincidentally was awarded the contract to build 1,200 units of new housing for veterans. So either this is a staggering conflict of interest of criminal proportions, or maybe just another coincidence. You should also know that Saffron is a chancellor's associate at UCLA and holds an MBA from the university. So perhaps not all too surprising, under Saffron, the housing projects have been plagued by inexplicable delays, ballooning costs, and a quote, luxury affordable model that enriches the developer while veterans suffer in the streets.
Come take a look into Building 402. This is at the West LA VA Soldiers Home in our nation's capital of veteran homelessness. It's 107 studios and 13 two-bedrooms. It's 435 square feet. I don't think this kitchen, the fridge, and the stove, and the oven gets smaller. How much do you think Thomas Saffron and Associates, the Veteran Collective, claims these 120 units cost them to build? Well, we're going to tell you it is $64,261,556. That is over $500,000 per unit.
Forgive my asking such a dumb question, but for that price, couldn't we just buy them all a home? None of this makes any sense. But of course, it's not really supposed to, because as long as the public is too distracted to look, the land stays open for the tennis courts, the baseball diamonds, and the oil drills. But to keep a scam of this magnitude running for decades without a public revolt, you need a friendly face to sanitize the neglect. Enter a woman named Marcy Polier Schwartz and her nonprofit Village for Vets, which is an organization that supposedly distributes meals and small emergency grants in the form of sandwiches and sleeping bags. All the while, the massive land theft continues in the background. None of that ends up being much of a surprise once you find out that Marcy Schwartz herself is a wealthy Brentwood resident and has publicly advocated against building veteran housing, opting instead to favor things like parking lots. The same lots, by the way, involved in the Tillman bribery scandal, some of which she herself owns. So today we're going to call this what it really is. This isn't just policy failure. It's not just bureaucratic incompetence. This is a massive multi-billion-dollar real estate fraud. This is corrupt officials like Ted Lieu and Karen Bass writing laws to legalize the theft. This is the university regents and Thomas Saffron spending millions of dollars to buy those laws. This is high-ranking VA officials taking cash to look the other way. This is nonprofits run by people like Marcy Polier Schwartz, who put her own financial interests ahead of the veterans. These are people who looked at this sacred land that belongs to the men and women who help protect this country, land that's worth tens of billions of dollars, and they decided that it was too valuable for homeless veterans, so they took it for themselves, but that ends now.
I think raising awareness, look at all the stuff we see about like recent fraud issues going viral and stuff. I mean, it's been shared like ad nausea, but for what? I mean, this actual issue can end veteran homelessness in Los Angeles. Los Angeles was not the nation's capital of veteran homelessness. In fact, Los Angeles had more veterans being rehabilitated in Los Angeles than anywhere before. And we can absolutely get to that. We can house like what they say is maybe 10% of the homeless population here in Los Angeles without spending any city, county, or state tax dollars. Just federal, $1.4 billion budget. The whole VA as a nation has like a $300+ billion budget. The money is there, the land is there, the corruption's in the way, and the public awareness literally erodes that. And if we can reach out to our if we can reach out to our public officials, this will be made a difference. I mean, I absolutely believe that.
My name is James Lee. Thank you for watching this 5149 original documentary. A special thanks to Senate de Vermont, aka Mr. Checkpoint, for his help in putting this together. And of course, a massive thank you to you guys, the premium 5149 news crew and producers, for funding this kind of work. This is, I think, just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to this issue, and there's so much more fraud to uncover. So if you're able to, please take a second to hop on over to my website, 5149jameslee.com, where you can become a premium member today and support independent journalism. You can also pick yourself up some merch there. But if you're not able to contribute monetarily, no issue at all. Please just take a second to like this video, share it so we get that algo boost, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you could be the first to know when my next video drops. And as always, love to thank you for your time, and I'll see you in the next one.
That's not better than the sign, though.
Heard that a couple weeks ago.
Damn.
I read in a book, The Power. Oh, I have that book for you.